Hello, this is Matthew Travis Barber. Today I have a number of important topics to discuss with you, as well as my desire to make an urgent appeal that you participate in a demonstration coming up soon on December 9th and 10th. So December 9th will be the anniversary of the UN Genocide Convention. And on December 9th, the UN observes Genocide Prevention Day. So there will be some important events and discussions at the UN about genocide on this day. The Genocide Convention happened in 1948 when Raphael Lemkin, a Jewish survivor of the Holocaust, who was considering the Holocaust as well as the situation of the Armenian genocide, he introduced the concept of genocide to the world. Ever since that time, the UN has observed Genocide Prevention Day on December 9th. This year, Yazidis are going to hold some important demonstrations at UN offices. So the organization VETO-G, as well as the organization Tavasor, are going to host a big demonstration at the major UN campus in Bonn, Germany. So all Yazidis in Germany or elsewhere in Europe, if they're able to go, they can travel to Bonn and they can participate in this demonstration. Let's talk for a moment about why this is important. The Yazidi genocide happened 10 years ago, and the crimes committed by Daesh became very well known to the world. There was a lot of emphasis on this in international media, a lot of discussion about this on the part of government officials around the world, and a lot of readiness on the part of Western governments to fight against Daesh and end the threat posed by this extreme form of Salafi jihadism. However, many aspects of the Yazidi genocide are not well understood or are completely unknown to Western officials. For example, much of the problem with the Yazidi genocide is not only the fault of Daesh, it is also due to the actions of the KDP, the Kurdistan Democratic Party, the ruling party of the Kurdish government in Iraq. This party withdrew its Peshmerga, abandoning the Yazidis to face the onslaught of Daesh. But later, even after that mistake, instead of working to help address the situation of the Yazidis, help Yazidis go home and resettle, the KDP implemented a blockade policy that kept Yazidis trapped in camps. So until today, there are still Yazidis that have not been able to go home and rebuild their lives in Shingal 10 years later, even though Daesh has been gone from Shingal for a long time. But many Yazidis are in camps even 10 years later. They're still displaced. Another problem is that today there is no Qai Maqam in Shingal. There's no leadership in Shingal. This is something that has been needed intervention on the part of Western governments that could help intervene in the political problem in Shingal to help bring about the creation of a new administration, a restored governance and an administration that can help facilitate reconstruction in the area. Instead, Shingal has become part of a fault line of competition between international political blocs, with NATO on one side supporting Turkey and Russia on another side supporting Iran. And you see the way that this fault line runs directly through Shingal with different militias or political groups that are aligned on one side or the other of that divide. And because of this, there has been no restored governance in Shingal. And this is something really unfair. The Yazidis do not deserve to be at the center of this global competition. They are survivors of genocide, and we need the world to take a look at this problem and notice it. We need an international commission that can work to resolve the status of Shingal. We need intervention and support from Western political powers that can work with Baghdad to help create an administration in Shingal that is depoliticized, that will not allow partisan militias affiliated with different political groups to return and rule Shingal. We need Shingal to be a place where the Yazidi tradition and culture can survive. Yazidi tradition has been endangered. The Daesh attack endangered it and made it in danger of disappearing. And now Yazidis and those who work with them have fought for the last 10 years to try to ensure that this tradition can survive in its homeland, because it is much easier for Yazidi oral tradition and cultural tradition to survive in the Yazidi homeland than in diaspora all around the world. That's why Shingal is so important. That's why the message coming from the voices of Yazidi people matters so much, because Western leaders and Western politicians do not understand this problem, and they do not understand that more actors than Daesh have jeopardized the Yazidi homeland and caused this problem and exacerbated this problem. So we need Yazidis around the world to raise their voices on December 9th and 10th at UN offices. If you are near a UN office and you can host a demonstration there, that would be very useful. However, we know it is difficult. It is difficult to travel to Geneva or to a city with a major UN office. Advocacy costs a lot of money. And this is where the Yazidi community has suffered a major disadvantage over the past 10 years. It's not easy for a community that has suffered genocide to then be well funded and prepared to support major advocacy initiatives. The Kurdish government, on the other hand, has billions of dollars at its disposal that it can spend on the promotion of its image and its message and its political objectives. So, what have we seen over the last 10 years? Instead of all the truth and the facts about the genocide, which are well known in the Yazidi community, instead of those facts being transmitted clearly to Western government officials, we have seen the KDP, through its role as leading the KRG, dominate the advocacy space. We have seen it platform its message quite successfully in Western events dedicated to dealing with the Yazidi issue. And we have seen many Yazidi voices promoted that either work for the KRG itself or receive funding from it, or who benefit on some level through maintaining a diplomatic association with the KRG, working alongside it for similar objectives through different humanitarian initiatives. This has been a big problem. The response of Western governments has been to fund humanitarian aid and some reconstruction projects. And they think that by doing that, they're doing their part. And yet the political dysfunction continues, and there's no restoration of administration in Shingal. And people, through all of these years, have suffered blockade policies that have prevented them from going home and rebuilding. This is really unacceptable. This does not represent the Yazidi people getting their rights. There's a problem, however. Many Yazidis are unprepared or afraid to speak out about these abuses. A main reason for this is fear. When I was in Germany in September, I spoke to Yazidis whose elderly parents or other relatives had been arrested by the Asaish, the secret police of the KDP, simply because this person living in Germany had posted a message on Facebook that was critical of KDP policies. Western officials do not understand the degree to which the Kurdistan region is a dictatorship with a lack of freedom of speech. And simply for criticizing these damaging government policies, Yazidis can be put in danger. This is a problem that must be fixed and must be addressed. So all Yazidis who can do so and be safe, must raise their voices, must exercise courage to raise their voices. Now, these two organizations, VETO-G and Tavasor, they are doing a good job of this, of speaking the truth. When I was in Germany in September, VETO-G had a major victory in hosting a demonstration outside of a German event, a German governmental event, that really pressured the German government to open its doors for deeper engagement directly with the Yazidi community, and not just with prominent voices representing highly visible organizations, often that have very enmeshed relationships with the KRG or the KDP. And many German officials were just unaware that most Yazidis don't agree with the message coming from the KRG or from these other organizations. Part of that problem is that the majority of Yazidis are not organized to really transmit their voice. This is a serious problem for advocacy. Part of it, again, comes back to funding. It is difficult for small grassroots organizations to have the money necessary to travel to all these capital cities and represent their point of view in these different forums. This is something that the KRG is able to do quite easily. So VETO-G made some progress by forcing the German government to listen, and many of the German officials were very willing to listen, and they wanted to understand why so many Yazidis were unhappy. Now, though this was a great victory, I was a little disappointed at the turnout at the demonstration in Berlin. And I was surprised that more Yazidis did not show up to raise their voices at this event, because I know what the majority opinion within the Yazidi community about the genocide is. I know the true beliefs and views of the Yazidi people. But when it comes time to talk about the truth publicly, many people become afraid, which I understand. And I don't want people to endanger their safety. But if possible, it would be very, very useful to see a larger turnout at the upcoming Genocide Prevention Day that will occur on December 9th and 10th. This will be at the main UN campus in Bonn of Germany. There will be some Yazidis also in Geneva at the UN headquarters there. I encourage Yazidis to participate and hold a demonstration there if they're able to. If you come to the demonstration in Bonn, try to bring a photograph of Raphael Lemkin. Hold that photograph of Raphael Lemkin up, that man who survived the Holocaust and who coined the term genocide in 1948. Wave a white flag, bring a photograph, and raise your voice, always peacefully. All protests and demonstrations need to be peaceful. They need to not involve aggression towards other people. They need to not involve destruction of property and not involve speech that is hateful towards others. It's important to state the facts and express our anger without causing damage to others. And the Western governments, most of them are closely allied with the KDP, the same KDP implementing blockade policies that have delayed recovery and delayed return of Yazidis to Shingal. They have also committed many abuses in the camps. They have cracked down on free speech, critical speech of Yazidis, made many arrests, used a great deal of political violence against any critics of their policies. So if the world, however, can still reach knowledge and awareness of the truth and push a message of truth, then we can have hope that even though the Kurdish government is closely allied with Western governments, and Western governments tend not to want to hear any criticism about it, our message about the reality and the facts of what has happened in this genocide, they can reach those ears. It can be successfully transmitted to the public. It can become common knowledge. This is a very important goal that we must keep striving for. Our message is not an extremist one. There's no conspiracy theory here. The Peshmerga withdrew deliberately and allowed this genocide to occur. I don't speak about the motive. I don't have conspiracy theories about why it happened. I just know that it did. That's not a conspiracy. That's a fact. Blockade was implemented by Kurdish authorities and Kurdish secret police for many years after that point, preventing Yazidis from carrying basic goods and building supplies home to rebuild their homes. These efforts were designed to keep the Yazidis imprisoned in camps in Duhok. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a fact. This is well known about because the established primary voices of Yazidi advocacy used to raise this problem in many meetings with Western officials. This was discussed many times, and yet no pressure came from the United States or Germany or Britain on the Kurdish authorities to change these policies. But the issues were known. So there's nothing extremist about talking about these basic facts. I'm not asking for something extreme. I'm asking for there to be a legitimate local administration in Shingal that's not politicized or tied to a political party so that Yazidis can come home. I'm asking for a local security force not tied to a party militia, something that exists under the government of Iraq, that is populated by the local people of the area who will have a stake in their own security and be able to defend their homeland. That's not an extremist request. That's not an extremist position. These are reasonable requests, and they must be the focus of our advocacy work now. When I was in Germany in September, and I gave some speeches and participated in some live streams and many discussions with Yazidis, much of the important discussion dealt with advocacy over the last 10 years. We had an opportunity to have a retrospective look back at the past 10 years and consider both the victories and the failures of Yazidi-related advocacy. Yazidi advocacy groups over the past 10 years have had some remarkable successes, and their message has been very important in bringing the Yazidi situation to the attention of the world. And much of the genocide recognition that has occurred for the Yazidi genocide is due to those efforts. So there has been many important victories and successes that we should be grateful for. At the same time, on another level, there's been some very significant failure. In the 10 years after this genocide, Yazidis are still in camps. There's no Kaimakam in Shingal. Blockade policies still exist. There's no nonpartisan local security entity for Shingal. These represent failures. And I believe, and I've stated this in my speeches, I believe that the next 10 years need to be different, and they need to be characterized by more boldness and directness in speaking the truth. We have to exercise more courage now to talk directly about the abuses, not just from Daesh, but from other sides that have afflicted the Yazidi people. That's where advocacy needs to go. That will be my focus, as it always has been. And I believe it will be the focus of more Yazidis with time, because now we see groups exercising more courage to speak out about the truth. VETO-G is one organization that is committed to speaking the truth. Tavasor is another organization that is committed to speaking the truth. Tavasor the name refers to the sun, which is very sacred for Yazidi tradition. Tavasor is committed to defending and preserving Yazidi oral tradition and Yazidi culture, these valuable things. So these are organizations that are taking a lead in speaking the truth. The Yazda organization has a new director, and I have heard her speaking the truth. So I believe we should be encouraging her to continue to have courage to speak the truth. We should not be attacking her. You know, when you're the leader of an advocacy or humanitarian organization, it can be scary to speak the truth. Everyone can tell you to speak the truth. They're not willing to speak it themselves, but they tell you to speak it. And then if you do, you become attacked by the authorities and the government in the place where you're trying to work, and your projects become blocked, and you lose your funding. There is a significant cost to speaking the truth. Be aware of that. Don't take it lightly. I'm encouraged by the fact that I see more willingness now to speak the truth. And when someone like the new director of Yazda speaks the truth, I encourage everyone to encourage her and thank her and tell her, please continue to say more of this. This is what we need. This will be beneficial. It's very important that as much as possible, we all work together and push the truth and not fight with each other or have competitions between our different organizations based on pride, based on the recognition that we all want or feel we deserve. It's important to try to lay aside these petty competitions and stand together and make this message heard. It's important because we have the chance now to make this message heard. We can bring this focus back to Mr. Karim Khan's attention, back to the attention of the UN officials, back to the attention of the various governments of countries around the world, all of whom have a responsibility to help the Yazidi people, because the Yazidi genocide was recognized as a genocide, first by the UN and later by many governments. Why then do we not see the most crucial things addressed? The need for administration and security that are nonpartisan, the end to blockade policies so that Yazidis can go home and rebuild. Why do we not see work on this? Why do we not see national governments around the world appointing Sinjar task forces to work on this problem? We don't see this. We just see earmarking of funds for humanitarian relief and then governments patting themselves on the back, although we did our part to help the Yazidis. These are not what's important. Yazidi people can rebuild their own areas. Their economy will bounce back as they begin to work. We need these political problems fixed. We need these security problems and administration problems fixed. If you're able to see it, behind me, there is a very large dam crossing the Columbia River behind the bridge over my shoulder. This is called the Dalles Dam. It's located at a town called the Dalles, Oregon, near where I grew up as a child. Now, this dam was built in the 1950s, and it now provides hydroelectric power, electricity, that impacts the livelihood of millions of people. Much of the energy generated by these dams on the Columbia River in Oregon is sent south and sold to California, where millions of people depend on it. So the dam was responsible for transforming the lives of many, many Americans. It was a major contribution to development in the Western United States. However, when its construction was completed in the 1950s, it caused the water to rise behind the dam. And this caused the complete submersion of a village, a Native American village called Celilo. Now, Celilo was one of the most important places for Native American culture in the Pacific Northwest. It was an important fishing village where Native Americans could fish salmon directly out of waterfalls inside the river. And it was a center of trade where different groups of Native Americans traveling from different areas would come together and exchange goods and hold ceremonies and participate in cultural exchange and have contact with each other. It was an important cultural capital in this area. And the US government destroyed that town by making the dam. So there was a high cost to the other benefits produced by this dam. And the government came to talk to people in Celilo before it happened to try to negotiate something that might make them happy, to try to buy from them the location of their own homeland. But do you think that's possible? Do you think it's possible to offer people any amount of money to be satisfied with the loss of their homeland? You already know the answer because I know from you the value that a homeland like Shingal holds. Now, I want to read you a poem written by a Native American man named Ed Edmo. And the name of his poem is Celilo Blues. He came, automaton, atomic government man, with briefcase in hand, wire-rimmed glasses that hung from his nose. His whining voice came out in a never-ending drone, promising promises again and again, deafened ears that are paid not to hear, mouthing words of pre-recorded briefing sessions behind armed guards. Again, we drowned. Now, I thought that poem was quite profound. The line that really stuck out to me in that poem is this line, deafened ears that are paid not to hear. That line reminded me so much of advocacy work. We have seen government officials in Europe, Britain, and America talk about the importance of listening, talk about how we need to sit with the Yazidis and listen and understand their concerns. But then we don't see any action. We see them implement the same policies over and over. It's as though the message that all of us who have performed advocacy over the last 10 years, it's as though our message that we have spoken doesn't reach the minds of the people we speak to. I think this is a problem that characterizes advocacy work around the world. If you can see a resonance in that experience with Native Americans from Celilo, a village up the river behind me, and the experience of Yazidis after the Yazidi genocide, and so many other minority communities that have tried to engage with authorities to secure their rights, sometimes engaging with the very authorities that are committing the abuses against them. I think we can just really appreciate how difficult advocacy work is. And the point of my message is that this is not hopeless. Advocacy work can bring about significant, tangible impacts. It already has, and it can in the future. But now you have to participate in it. Everyone hearing this message, I'm calling on you to participate in advocacy. You become part of the advocacy effort. Don't just leave it to others. Don't just expect Tavasor and VETO-G to take care of promoting the truth. You have to speak the truth. It requires all of us. Your voice matters. This is a big effort. It's too big for any one organization or any group of committed advocates. It has to be a global effort. Yazidis everywhere have to pursue the transmission of the truth to people in authority so that they hear and they understand, and we can make them understand. We don't want to just expect someone else to take care of this for us and then point the finger at them and be angry when they fail or when they don't meet our expectations. If you believe that the past decade of Yazidi advocacy has failed you, then take responsibility to pursue advocacy yourself. You become part of the solution. And with that, I'll just return to what I said in the opening. Join VETO-G and Tavasor in Bonn, in Germany, on December 9th and 10th. Raise your voice at the UN. Let them hear your message. If you are in another country or another city where there is a UN office and you can organize a group of Yazidis to come together and hold a demonstration at a UN office, let the UN know that you agree that Genocide Prevention Day should be observed, that it's important to prevent genocide, but that since the Yazidi genocide was not prevented, there are now responsibilities on the part of the UN and governments around the world to properly intervene. Let's stand together and continue in this fight, however long it takes. Thanks for your attention and thanks for listening.